What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Thank you for clicking onto this reaction. I hope you're looking forward to it just as much as I am. If you haven't already, head over to the content creators page. That link is in the description box down below. If you haven't already and you're enjoying our content, you know what you need to do. You need to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, but we're going to jump straight into this one. Reacting to Ancient Greek Kingdom in India. Let's go. Oh, this is a really cool intro. I've not seen this before from Kings and Generals. Is this a game? Or no, that was Kings and Generals. Oh, this is a really good animation.
In our previous video on Greco-Bactria, we briefly covered the...
Is this an older video? This is 4 years ago. I actually really like that intro. It's a shame. It really confused me for a second there when it went into this and the audio was a bit, and like, yeah, it's a different maps. I was like, oh wait, this is old, but I really like that intro. That was a really cool intro.
Indo-Greeks. In this video, we shall go more in depth upon the history and culture of this enigmatic period of Hellenic history. When and how did it begin? Who were its most successful rulers, and just how Greek was the Indo-Greek kingdom? All of these questions will be answered, and more.
Okay, let's go, let's find out.
As with every story set during the Hellenic Age, this one begins with Alexander. The young Macedonian king had conquered his way across the Near East and Central Asia, and by 325 BC had reached the Hindu Kush. Upon his conquest of the region, Alexander created 4 satrapies, and within them founded 3 prominent cities: Alexandria on the Indus, Alexandria on the Caucasus, and Alexandria Escite, Alexandria the furthest. These outpost cities were populated with Greek settlers, and formed the basis for Hellenic presence in this region for centuries to come.
Didn't even think of that. Didn't think about the settlers going into there. That's a good point to bring up.
Upon Alexander's death, these northern Indian satrapies became the territory of Seleucus I Nicator, one of Alexander's generals and founder of the Seleucid Empire.
We covered that in the Daibachi Wars, I believe.
However, he did not hold these territories for long. Further into the subcontinent was the burgeoning Mauryan Empire, led by Chandragupta, who sought no
thank you very much, Bradley. Hope you're enjoying.
less than to rule all of India. Chandragupta annexed the Macedonian satrapies in the Indus without much trouble. Seleucus and Chandragupta fought between 305 and 303 in a war that we know very little about. It seems that Chandragupta had the upper hand, but to avoid a prolonged war, he struck a deal. Seleucus was gifted
Oh, is he going to regret that deal?
500 Indian war elephants to recognize Mauryan claim over the Indus, while Chandragupta married Seleucus's daughter. Peace was secured, and Chandragupta came to rule over all of India, including the population of Greeks who had settled there under Alexander.
Oh, I see.
In 268 BC, Ashoka the Great ascended as the Mauryan emperor. In 260 BC, he converted to Buddhism and sent Buddhist missionaries across Central Asia. During this time, he claimed to have converted the Greeks in his realm, who he called the Yavanas, to Buddhism.
But he didn't,
Meanwhile,
did he?
further north, the Greeks of Bactria had seceded from the Seleucid dynasty and formed the independent Greco-Bactrian realm by 250 BC.
Clearly not.
20 years later, Ashoka the Great died, and the Mauryan Empire began a slow decline. In 190 BC, the Greco-Bactrians, led by King Demetrius II of the Euthydemed dynasty, began a conquest into the Indus, reclaiming the Indian satrapies created by Alexander 100 years before. The Greco-Bactrians managed to conquer the regions of Paru-Pamisada, Arachosia and western Punjab. However, their advance would be abruptly cut short. Back in the Bactrian capital, Demetrius II was deposed by an official known as Eucratides, who styled himself as the new Bactrian king.
It's so funny how stability just gets taken away so quickly.
This caused a schism among the Greeks, creating a Bactrian state ruled by Eucratides and an Indo-Greek state ruled by the Euthydemed dynasty. Thus, by 180 BC, the Indo-Greek kingdom as we know it had begun.
180
In 155 BC,
okay.
Menander I, known as Milinda to the Indians, ascended as king of the Indo-Greeks. His reign, which lasted around 25 years, was considered the most successful of all the Indo-Greek kings. Menander was born in a village called Kalassi, near Alexandria in the Caucasus. He inherited his kingdom from Antimachus II, and initially ruled over territory from the Hindu Kush to West Punjab. His capital was Sagala, a prosperous, wealthy city that blended Greek and Indian designs.
So that city sounds really interesting. Is it still around today? So his capital was Sagala back then. So what is it called now? I'd like to know what it's called now, and if it's still, well, if it is called anything, and if it's around now. That would be really interesting, because I'm trying to build up places that I'd like to go see, and that a conversion of Indian and Greek culture would be very interesting to see. That would be very cool.
Prosperous, wealthy city that blended Greek and Indian designs. The king was a well-educated man who, despite being Greek, was educated in Indian history and tradition. Knowledgeable in the ancient Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, and Vaisheshika systems of poetry, philosophy and arithmetic, and he was well learned in the art of war.
Once again, very interesting.
According to the Greek geographer Strabo, Menander conquered more tribes than Alexander the Great, although this is likely hyperbolic.
I see.
With that said, the Indo-Greek king definitely expanded the borders of his realm.
How far did he get?
He conquered eastern Punjab and Mathura, and even pushed into central India as far as Pataliputra. However, here he was pushed back by the Brahmin king Pushyamitra, who ruled what remained of the Mauryan Empire. By some accounts, this Brahmin king was a cruel persecutor of Buddhists. He had even offered a reward for the murder of Buddhist monks in the city of Shakala, which was on the border between his realm and the Indo-Greeks. This was likely for political reasons. Pushyamitra sought to suppress the Buddhist religion, as his main rival, Menander, was a great patron of Buddhism. Buddhist art. Once
again, it's been said in this stream multiple times that religion is just so next to politics, and it's a shame.
Literature
it's a shame
and
that
tradition
people are suffering because of that decision.
Kingdom, and the Greek king himself had converted to the faith. This conversion is well documented in an ancient Buddhist text known as the Milinda Panha, meaning the questions of Menander, in which Menander has a long dialogue with a Kashmiri Buddhist sage known as Nagasena. Nagasena himself was trained by a great monk known as Dharmarakshita, who himself was an ethnic Greek convert to Buddhism during the reign of Ashoka Maurya.
He converted to Buddhism
during this
well.
Dialogue between Greek king and Buddhist sage.
Again, so at this point, how much of these Greek people still have the Greek culture? So I imagine they have a lot, and they have a lot of the stories. But again, it would be this mixture culture. It'd be so interesting to see that dynamic actually be outplayed in real life. Like, yeah, I'd be really interested to see this sort of dynamic where you're sort of getting people like taught from both sides of the spectrum, you know? Not spectrum, both sides of the cultures. It'd be so interesting.
Sena himself
so
was trained by a great monk known as Dharmarakshita, who himself was an ethnic Greek convert to Buddhism during the reign of Ashoka Maurya. During this dialogue between Greek king and Buddhist sage, Menander asks Nagasena many questions about life, including the concept of a soul, asceticism, memory, attachment, and wealth.
Yeah.
Delighted by the sage's wisdom, Menander declares his conversion to the Buddhist faith. The Milinda Pranha claims that after this dialogue, Menander abdicated his kingship to his son and retired from the world, eventually reaching Arhat, the Enlightenment, and achieving Nirvana.
Fascinating. I'm actually really enjoying this. It might not sound like it. Like I might not be talking that much because I'm getting a bit too immersed in it, and just trying to sort of process it. It's really interesting that he handed it over. He, like, when he converted, he was able to hand it over, able to find peace, and I really think that's a really good sentiment, that he was able to sort of actually find peace within a religion. And if that's what it does for you, then that's great, you know. Yeah, whatever that religion is, if that helps you, that is great. And yeah, it was a really interesting thing to hear, because you hear it all the sort of time where people sort of give up all the power and everything just to sort of go be with themselves in a cave, just with themselves, their beliefs and their thoughts. And yeah, it's just a really sort of interesting sentiment to sort of think about sometimes.
However, this is poorly attested. While he lived the rest of his life,
well, once again, a video has just made me look like a fool.
As a devout Buddhist, Menander most likely died from sickness while on campaign against a Greek usurper in his realm, the self-styled Indo-Greek king Zoisos II. Regardless, King Menander would be remembered as the strongest of the Indo-Greek kings, and fostered stability in his realm during his reign. The Indo-Greeks would never quite reclaim the glory they experienced under Menander, and the Indo-Greek kingdom would slowly decline after his death, fracturing into multiple smaller Greek-ruled states that often squabbled amongst themselves. So, just how Greek was the Indo-Greek kingdom?
That is my question.
If Menander and his followers were patrons of Buddhism and adopted Eastern practices, how much of Greek culture remained? In other Hellenic kingdoms, such as the Ptolemies or Seleucids, there existed a strict racial hierarchy. In the Indo-Greek kingdom, things seemed to have been different. As it stands, all the historical evidence we have of the Indo-Greek kingdom points to a unique syncretic blend of culture, in which Greeks mingled with the local Indian population, existing side by side, oftentimes merging their worldviews into one.
That's so interesting. So I bet it was, I bet it just created such an interesting dynamic, because like they said, like the culture, the hierarchy, these things would keep you separated. So that's why other regions kept their own identity when these other invading forces come in, and had this hierarchy where the invading forces could only be at the top. So usually it sort of breaks that sort of culture, you know, because there's no intermingling, you know, we're up here, you're down here. Whereas in this situation, because that wasn't the hierarchy wasn't there in this situation, it created the ability for that dynamic to flourish.
The Greeks introduced aspects of their architecture into the Indian world. In the Milinda Pranha, Menander's capital of Sagala is described as having a white-walled citadel and well laid out streets, squares, crossroads and marketplaces, hinting at Hellenic influence in its design. Remains of the iconic Corinthian-style marble columns have been found in India, bearing imagery of elephants, Buddhist monks and Buddha himself, a testament to the merging of Eastern and Western cultures.
I'm really glad they sort of showed those pictures there as well. Once again, I'm assuming it's no longer around, which is sad. A big shame. But I'd definitely like to see if there's any sort of museums or anything like that with these objects in, so I could sort of see the remnants of what was left if it's no longer around.
This cultural syncretism is further evidenced by the coinage of the Indo-Greek kings. They were often bilingually inscribed, both in the Greek language and in Pali, the language spoken by the original Buddha himself. The coins of Menander, however, depict the goddess Athena, with the description Athena Alkidemos, Athena the Saviour. This shows that despite their adoption of Eastern religion, the Greeks did not give up their own gods, and in fact incorporated them into Indian religion. Greco-Buddhist art flourished in the
But once again, that's what the Greek and Roman religions done quite often, wasn't it?
Greek and Bactrian realms. Their cult of form directly influenced Buddhist art, and it was around this time that Buddha was first depicted in human form.
Okay, interesting.
Common practice to depict the legendary Greek hero Heracles as the Buddha's protector. While these intricate artworks
very interesting blend of culture here.
Depicted Eastern themes and Eastern gods, they bore the distinct, austere marble cult of form which makes them iconically Hellenic in design. In 10 AD, the last Indo-Greek realm would fall. But this would not be the end of Greek presence in India. In 30 AD, the former territories of the Indo-Greek realm would fall under the control of the Kushan Empire. The Kushans borrowed heavily from the Greeks. In fact, Greek was their official administrative language until 127 AD, and the Bactrian language they spoke from that point on used the Greek alphabet.
Oh, very interesting.
The Greeks remained a visible minority in the Kushan Empire for centuries. The Kushans...
So if they were a minority, then why was their language so heavily based on Greek?
Being devout Buddhists themselves, borrowed heavily from the Greco-Buddhist traditions that had developed over the past 2 centuries. Under the Kushans, Greek Buddhist monks would play a large role in the spread of Buddhism into China and beyond. Eventually, the Greek presence in India would fade away. However, their centuries-long presence in the Indian subcontinent and the cultural legacy they left behind leaves a fascinating story for history enthusiasts around the world to study for years to come.
Definitely like to have a look.
There are no more interesting parts of history than when 2 worlds collide.
Once again, Kings and Generals hit it nail on the head there. Nothing is more interesting than when 2 worlds collide. We definitely believe so as people who are interested in history. What a great reaction. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. What should we jump on to next?